is there room on the relevant linear regression channels? So we did talk about that. I kind of showed you like what it looked like to find room. I think it was specifically on near. We used the example of, on the, I think it was the 2 hour time frame. Did we have extra room or did we not? And it was on this trade right here, right? So if I was going to do this short trade, in this particular instance, I'm comfortable with it because I see that, the bottom of the channel is down here. But I just basically said if the bottom of the channel, the very bottom of the channel was right here, and it was a channel that was currently being respected, or it was right here, like, would it be worth it? And you have to kind of ask yourself that question. And sometimes to make it worth it, you may have to just collapse your asymmetry a bit, right? You may have to just say, okay, you know what, I'm going to make this tighter because I need a better entry. I'm going to make this tighter. I'll just make it a hard stop. So I need to make it extremely tight. And then I guess even if the channel bottom was right here, it would be some really nice asymmetry. Because if I lose, which I could absolutely lose on any given trade, but if I lose, even on a 10x, I'd lose about 5%. And if I was successful on a 10x, I'd make about 46%. And that's literally 10.75 parts reward per unit of risk. And I'm okay with that. And I've looked at the history of near. I've looked at how it respects volatility lines. Yeah, here it never messed with it much. Let's really review it because this is kind of like what I also do. I've looked at the last few and it's like, yep, here, yep, and the moment that it disrespected it was the moment it climbed out of it, and then looks like right about here, maybe it. I guess this is kind of where it started to break out of it, right? So then it respected it, overall respected it. There was this moment in time where it had a little bit of a breach, but it didn't close that way. Okay, so the 2 hour actually respects it pretty well. And then I have to take into account, I do see, any given 10-hour period, it can go into, a bearish configuration and then pop back out of it, right? In like 12 hours, right? 6 bars or however many candles this is, right? So for a relatively short period of time, it can appear to be breaking trend and go into the bearish volatility cloud. But I'm also acknowledging that this one has been a pretty long-standing one. So I'm not going to be afraid to ride this one, or at least to give it a shot here, again, based on this particular risk-reward configuration. I'm going to do it, right? So, because when they can last a little while, even in this time frame. Everything is relevant to the 2-hour time frame. But that was my point was just what if the channel only went this far? Would you still do it? In this case, the real trade actually goes way further. So if somebody wanted to have really tight asymmetry and they wanted to go for a 20x, not advisable unless that's your belt level. But if they wanted to go for a 20x, this would be a place where they could say, you know what? Worst case, I lose whatever it is, 10% of my capital. So let me be cautious and thoughtful about how much capital I put into this trade. Let's call it $1,000. Okay, I'm willing to lose about $100. And then if I'm successful, it's down here, right? It's 11 times 20, right? So like 200, right? So that's a 3x of my capital. So am I willing to lose $100 to potentially walk away with an extra $2,000? Okay, I'm going to do it, right? And that's up to the individual. I'm not condoning any of that. And then the same thing would go for this. You have to look at the trade, look at how high of a quality setup it is, what you believe, all the different factors are going to add up to be. And if you believe this is a good trade, you take it. Or maybe you make 2 separate trades and you just, maybe you do leave a gap, right? Because leaving the gap allows, maybe leaving the gap, is that not working? There it is. I like this clone button too. Maybe leaving the gap allows for you to, have 49 asymmetry on 2 trades. So what's the worst downside that can happen here if you leave a gap? You can stair step it and ensure that you make the trade unless it blows through, in which case you'll get stopped out on 3 trades, right? Supposing you had a second trade here and then this was the third trade, you could do that. And as long as price action landed somewhere in here and then went up, you'd be fine, even if barely. You could lose if it goes all the way through. You lose all your stop losses. They could easily get blown through if that were to happen. And then, or you have option 3, which is I'm going to use 1 bit of logic for this bottom one, and I'm going to use 1 bit of logic for this top one. I'm taking the risk that price action goes right here, and then it comes up, meaning this trade would never be entered, and this trade I'd lose money on, and that's it. I lose money on 1 trade. And so there is a chance that that happens, right? So you could literally choose how you want to play the game with 1, 2, or even 3 different positions, right? Because the position that I showed before, the very first one, looked like that. And that wasn't that bad either if you catch a nice midterm bottom, right? Like that would be, again, if it's successful, we can all agree that 15 risk reward ratio is really nice. And we can all agree that 30 ROI as a target is really nice. And we can all agree that depending on your leverage, spot trading or maybe 2x leverage or something like that, 2.5x leverage, maybe somewhere in the neighborhood of a loss of 5% is not that bad and worth taking in this particular instance, right? If it does what we hope it does, right? Again, based on probability, not certainty. So that's a bit of overkill on that, but we talked a bit about channel breaks being conducive, and we talked a bit about linear regression channels and channels in general. Standard deviation considerations, I'll probably go into that in a different setup, like a different class, but I think that for now, these will help everyone just by taking these things into consideration before they make decisions. And that is the conclusion for list 1. So I'm going to start a new video for list 2.